And the Oscar goes to John Wayne for True Grit. But let me tell you, the man was so much more than just a cowboy riding across the silver screen. He was a silent tycoon, a true empire builder. While his adoring fans were distracted by his grit gunfights and rugged persona, he was quietly stacking up a massive fortune behind the curtain. He famously brushed off financial worries, once admitting, "I'm pretty happy with how it went. Maybe I should have saved a buck or two, but honestly, it doesn't really matter." He doubled down on that sentiment, claiming he would probably blow every dime exactly the same way if given a second chance. But the real shocker dropped right after he passed away. When the lawyers finally unsealed the details of his hidden wealth, all of Hollywood was left with their jaws on the floor. His legacy wasn't just about iconic movies. It was a financial powerhouse. The Duke had constructed a business empire that absolutely nobody in Tinseltown saw coming. Let's rewind the tape to the early days. Long before John Wayne became a legend, he was just a kid from the cornfields named Marion Robert Morrison. Born way back in 1907 in Winterset, Iowa, his beginnings were far from glamorous. His family scraped by, living a very modest, simple life. It was a scratch-and-survive existence, but the Morrison clan was tight-knit and always stuck together through the rough patches. While Marion was still just a youngster, the family packed up and headed west to Glendale, California. That move changed the trajectory of his entire life, leading to his legendary nickname, Duke. The moniker actually came from his childhood pet, a massive Airedale Terrier who was also named Duke. You rarely saw one without the other. The local firemen started calling the dog Big Duke and the kid Little Duke, and the name just sort of hung around. Marion hated his birth name, so he embraced the nickname. From that point on, he was simply Duke, a handle that would define him for the rest of his days. Growing up, Duke was a powerhouse of energy. He was built like a tank, incredibly athletic and absolutely obsessed with sports. By high school, he was tearing it up on the football field. He was such a standout star that he snagged a football scholarship to the University of Southern California. This was his golden ticket. It was a huge deal that promised him a bright, successful future away from poverty. He had dreams of becoming a major gridiron sensation, but then fate threw a nasty curveball. A body surfing accident left Duke with a severe injury. The damage was catastrophic. It ended his football career before it really began and completely altered his path. It was a devastating blow for the young man. He had poured everything into athletics, and in a snap it was gone. Most people would have thrown in the towel, but Duke possessed a grit that couldn't be taught. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, he dusted himself off and started hunting for a new way to make his mark on the world. In 1926, an old coach called in a favour and got Duke a gig at a movie studio. It wasn't anything fancy to start with. He was basically a glorified labourer at Fox Film Corporation, moving furniture, hauling props, and doing whatever grunt work needed to be done. Even though he was at the bottom of the ladder, it gave him a front row seat to the magic of filmmaking. He even started sneaking into shots as an extra in silent movies. They were blink and you miss it roles, but he was technically in show business. It was during these days at Fox that he bumped into a director named John Ford. They hit it off immediately. Ford saw a raw, undeniable presence in the big guy and had a hunch he was destined for greater things. That friendship turned out to be the most critical relationship of his life. John Ford would eventually direct the masterpieces that cemented Duke as a global icon. One of his very first credited gigs was in a 1928 film called Mother Macri. His job, literally herding a flock of geese. It was a tiny, slightly embarrassing part, but it was his first legitimate step onto the Hollywood ladder. For Duke, that goose herding gig was the launch pad for a journey that would take him from bit player to the most recognisable face in American cinema. His time-lugging props was just the prequel. The hunger was there, and soon he would get a shot at real acting. But the road to stardom wasn't a straight line. In the early years, Marion Morrison had to undergo a massive rebranding. In 1930, director Raoul Walsh decided the name Marion had to go. He christened him John Wayne. The studio execs thought Marion sounded way too soft for a rough-and-tumble Western hero. John Wayne sounded like a guy who could win a bar fight. It was the perfect label for the rugged archetype they wanted him to embody. And just like that, Marion Morrison vanished and John Wayne was born. That same year, he landed his first leading role in a massive epic called The Big Trail. It was a huge production using cutting-edge widescreen technology. The studio had high hopes it would be a blockbuster smash, but there was a major technical glitch in the plan. Most theatres didn't have the projectors to show the new film format. Consequently, the movie absolutely tanked at the box office. It was a financial disaster, and it slammed the brakes on John Wayne's rising star. But even after The Big Trail flopped, he refused to quit. For the next decade, he was banished to Poverty Row, churning out dozens of low-budget westerns with flimsy scripts. They weren't winning any awards, but they kept food on the table and gave him endless practice in front of the camera. He treated those cheap movies like acting school. Film after film, he honed his craft, figuring out exactly what made a Western hero tick. It was during this grind that he sculpted his signature persona. He played the brave, honest, stoic type over and over again. He perfected that towering stance, the slow, deliberate speech, and that walk that exuded quiet confidence. His look and his voice became inseparable from the cowboy image. Audiences began to feel like they were watching a real man, not an actor. Those grueling years in the B-movie trenches helped John develop the unique style that would eventually make him a legend. He was also learning the business side of things. He didn't just stand on his mark, he studied the entire machine, watching how the lights were rigged, how directors managed chaotic sets, and how the stars were pampered or pushed. He absorbed every technical nuance that most aspiring actors completely ignored. This obsession with the craft became his secret weapon as he slowly climbed the ladder. Then the calendar hit 1939 and the universe finally decided to deal him a winning hand. Enter John Ford, the legendary hard-nosed director, who had been friends with Wayne for years. Ford decided to take a massive gamble on his drinking buddy, casting him in a project that would change cinema history. Stagecoach Wayne stepped into the boots of the Ringo Kid, a dangerous but charismatic outlaw seeking redemption. This wasn't another cheap, dusty B-movie. Stagecoach featured brilliant writing, visionary direction, and a narrative that grabbed you by the throat. The release was an absolute explosion at the box office. Audiences didn't just like the movie, they fell head over heels for the towering presence of John Wayne, who commanded every frame he was in. It was the lightning bolt he had been chasing for a decade. After grinding through Poverty Row westerns and uncredited roles, he had finally shattered the glass ceiling to become a bona fide Hollywood titan. The long, painful slog was officially over, and his career trajectory went vertical. From that moment on, the name John Wayne wasn't just a name. It was a brand known in every household across America. He crafted a persona of the rugged, unshakable cowboy, a mythic figure of American masculinity that would define him and arguably the entire genre for the next 40 years. Those early years of failure weren't wasted. They forged the steel in his spine. When the spotlight finally hit him, John Wayne wasn't just lucky. He was a seasoned veteran ready to carry the weight of stardom. His discipline and endless rehearsals were about to pay massive dividends. The iconic role that would etch his face onto the Mount Rushmore of pop culture was waiting right there in the script. Welcome to the golden era. Once Stagecoach hit theatres in 1939, the landscape of John Wayne's life was permanently altered, launching a dynasty of hits. The film snagged 7 Academy Award nominations, instantly cementing Wayne as a heavy hitter in Tinseltown. More importantly, it kicked off a professional marriage with John Ford that would become the stuff of legend. Spanning from 1939 all the way to 1963, this dynamic duo collaborated on masterpiece after masterpiece, shaping the visual language of the American West. This partnership forced Wayne to evolve. Take The Long Voyage Home, for example, an early project where he shed the cowboy hat to play a vulnerable, naive Swedish sailor, showcasing surprising range. It was a direct slap in the face to critics who said he couldn't act. These roles proved he possessed genuine emotional intelligence, building a connection with audiences that went deeper than just gunfights. He was becoming the archetype of the brave, stoic hero. By the late 1940s and rolling into the 50s, he swapped his six-shooter for a rifle dominating the war movie genre. In 1949, he headlined Sands of Iwo Jima, portraying the tough-as-nails Sergeant Stryker. The performance was so convincing, it earned him his very first Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. He was proving he was more than a one-trick pony. He returned to the saddle for classics like She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, Rio Grande, and the psychological masterpiece, The Searchers. These weren't simple shoot-'em-ups, they were complex character studies that allowed him to explore grief, obsession, and duty. Wayne also began using his massive platform to broadcast his personal patriotism. He was fiercely devoted to his country and held conservative views that he wasn't afraid to shout about. He wanted his filmography to reflect those core American values. This passion led him to direct and star in The Alamo in 1960, a project he bled for. Later, amidst immense controversy in 1969, he released The Green Berets. It stood as the only major Hollywood production to openly support the Vietnam War during the conflict. To Wayne, these weren't just movies, they were political statements he felt duty-bound to make. They gave him a powerful megaphone beyond the silver screen. But the crowning achievement of his acting life arrived late in the game when he finally hoisted the Oscar in 1969 for True Grit. As Rooster Cogburn, a cantankerous, one-eyed US Marshal with a drinking problem, Wayne deconstructed his own myth. It was a far cry from the clean-cut heroes of his youth. The role allowed him to be funny, vulnerable, and physically exhausted, all while retaining that dangerous edge. Audiences and critics alike were charmed by his willingness to poke fun at his own legacy. That gold statue was the final validation that he was a craftsman of the highest order. John Wayne stood at the summit of Hollywood, an untouchable legend with a resume of hits that would never be matched. But here is the scandalous twist: you can be the king of Hollywood and still be a pauper. Despite his fame, Wayne's disastrous judgment in people was about to cost him a literal fortune. Let's talk about the money or the lack of it. John Wayne generated millions at the box office. Yet behind the scenes, cash was hemorrhaging from his accounts at an alarming rate. Not once but twice, he found himself staring into the abyss of financial ruin. These weren't small hiccups, they were catastrophic blunders that forced him to learn hard lessons about trust and greed. The first nightmare unfolded in the 1950s. At the height of his fame, Wayne handed the keys to his kingdom to a business manager named Beau Roos. Beau had total authority. He signed the checks, made the investments, and managed the empire while Wayne was busy making movies. Wayne assumed Beau was a financial wizard, so he didn't bother checking the books. That blind faith was a fatal error. Beau convinced him to dump money into shady ventures in Panama. On paper, it promised massive returns, but in reality, it was a sinkhole. In that single botched deal, Wayne saw $700,000 vanish into thin air. But wait, it gets worse. That bad investment triggered a domino effect, wiping out another $1 million in related assets. The coffers were empty and the Duke was left holding the bag. Imagine being the biggest star on the planet but having zero liquidity. He was practically broke, and tragically, he didn't learn his lesson the first time around. Years later, he made the same mistake again, but this time the betrayal hit closer to home. He entrusted his recovering fortune to a member of his own family. Donald LaCava, the husband of his eldest daughter, stepped in to manage the finances. Wayne figured blood was thicker than water, and that family wouldn't screw him over. He was wrong. Donald proved to be just as incompetent, if not worse. Instead of plugging the leaks, he drilled new holes in the ship, making reckless decisions that compounded the debt. Wayne was blissfully unaware of the disaster until the humiliating reality arrived in his mailbox. The breaking point was a simple bill from a luxury department store, Saks Fifth Avenue. The total was $3,500. It was unpaid, overdue. A trivial amount for a superstar, yet he didn't have the funds to cover it. For a man who had generated billions for studios, the inability to pay for some clothes was a shock to the system. It was the ultimate wake-up call that snapped him out of his complacency. The nice guy act was over. He immediately cleaned house, firing the incompetent relatives and managers who had bled him dry. He vowed never to let another soul have signatory power over his accounts. From that day forward, John Wayne took the reins of his own financial destiny. He started reading the fine print, grilling lawyers and scrutinising every penny. He pivoted his strategy, prioritising high-paying roles that offered upfront cash to rebuild his safety net. No more risky speculations in foreign countries. Step by painful step, he clawed his way back to solvency, becoming as sharp in the boardroom as he was on the movie set. The Duke learned the hard way that earning money is one thing, but keeping it is a whole different ballgame. He became fiercely protective of every dime, ensuring that he wasn't just building a bank account, but a dynasty that would secure a lavish lifestyle for his kids and their kids long after he was gone. Those brutal financial missteps in his past transformed John Wayne into a hawk when it came to his fortune, teaching him to never let his guard down again. He became obsessive about tracking his cash flow, vetting every investment personally to ensure he never repeated the mistakes that nearly ruined him. But while his bank account was growing healthier, the man himself was secretly falling apart. It all traces back to a massive production disaster. In 1956, Wayne signed on for a film that many now call cursed the ill-fated epic known as The Conqueror. The studio chose St. George, Utah as the backdrop, thinking the rugged terrain was perfect for the desert setting. But there was a deadly secret lurking just downwind. The US government had been detonating nuclear bombs at the Nevada test site nearby. For weeks, the desert winds carried toxic radioactive dust right onto the set, coating the actors, the equipment and the food, effectively poisoning the entire cast and crew day after day. At the time, nobody understood the invisible killer they were breathing in. Over 200 unsuspecting people were on location, completely unaware they were working in a radioactive hot zone. The aftermath was nothing short of a horror story. Decades later, the statistics were terrifying. Out of the 220 people on that set, a staggering 91 of them were eventually diagnosed with some form of cancer. The death toll was heartbreaking, with 46 of those cast and crew members losing their lives to the disease, a rate that was statistically impossible to dismiss as mere coincidence. While the government stayed quiet, Hollywood whispered that the nuclear fallout was to blame. John Wayne, the unshakable titan of the screen, was just one of the many victims caught in that deadly cloud. The consequences hit him hard in 1964, when doctors delivered the devastating news he had lung cancer. While his 5-pack-a-day smoking habits certainly didn't help the diagnosis, was a massive blow to his invincible image. To save his life, surgeons had to perform a brutal operation, removing his entire left lung and several ribs in a procedure that would have ended the career of a lesser man. The press and public were bracing for his funeral, convinced he couldn't survive such trauma. But in true Wayne fashion, he defied the odds, storming back onto the screen and throwing himself into his work with even more intensity. Tragically, the beast wasn't done with him yet. Years later, a second diagnosis rocked his world: stomach cancer. It was a cruel encore, forcing him into yet another agonizing fight for survival. Instead of hiding, he went public, using his celebrity power to break the stigma. He urged his millions of fans to stop ignoring symptoms and get checked, turning his private pain into a public crusade. He wanted his suffering to mean something, to save lives. Ironically, his final on-screen appearance mirrored his reality in a way that still gives fans chills. His last film, released in 1976, was The Shootist. In an eerie case of art imitating life, Wayne played an aging gunfighter who was slowly dying of cancer, looking for one last dignified way to go out. The performance was stripped back, raw and heartbreakingly authentic. What audiences didn't fully grasp was that the pain in his eyes wasn't acting. He was battling the disease off camera at the exact same time, making every scene a heavy reflection of his own mortality. It was his cinematic farewell, a perfect goodbye letter to the industry he ruled. On June 11th, 1979, the fight finally ended. The icon passed away at 72, leaving the world a little quieter. The long, grueling war with his health was over. Despite being ravaged by illness for nearly 15 years, he never once let it stop the cameras from rolling until he physically couldn't continue. He maintained that stoic, larger-than-life persona for his children and his adoring public fighting death with the same grit he showed in his westerns. While he kept the ugliest details of his sickness behind closed doors, the legacy he left behind wasn't just on celluloid. When the dust settled, the reading of his will revealed just how much of an empire he had built. The reading of the will was a blockbuster event in itself. When the Duke died in June of 1979, he didn't just leave behind a filmography, he left a complex financial web. The numbers were impressive. His estate was valued at roughly $7 million back then, which was a massive sum for a Hollywood actor in the 70s. If you adjust that for inflation, we are talking about a fortune hovering near $25 million in today's currency. It was the result of decades of grinding work-smart real estate moves and accumulating valuable assets. His portfolio was diverse, featuring sprawling ranches in Arizona and prime real estate in Washington state. These weren't just investments, they were sanctuaries where he had escaped the madness of Hollywood. But the real drama was in the details of the legal documents. His will was a meticulously crafted instrument designed to protect his bloodline and reward loyalty, while coldly shutting out others. It was a final judgment on the people in his life. He categorized everyone he knew into two camps, those who deserved his gratitude and those who deserved absolutely nothing. Wayne fathered 7 children across 2 different marriages, and he made sure every single one of them was set for life. He divided the bulk of the estate among them to guarantee they'd never face the poverty he once feared. Beyond the cash, he bequeathed deeply personal artifacts and memorabilia to them, ensuring the sentimental legacy stayed within the immediate family circle. The document proved that underneath the tough exterior, he was a devoted father who wanted to shield his offspring from the harsh world. However, the way he handled his ex-wives raised some eyebrows. For his first wife, Josephine, he showed a surprising amount of grace. Even though they had been split for years, he established a trust fund to ensure she received monthly checks for the rest of her life. It was a classy move, acknowledging their history and the mother of his children. But his generosity didn't stop at blood relatives. He had a soft spot for the staff who kept his chaotic life in order. In a touching gesture, he left hefty sums, tens of thousands of dollars, to his 2 longtime secretaries. These women had been the gatekeepers of his life, managing his schedule and secrets for years. He knew they had sacrificed a lot to serve him, and he wasn't about to leave them empty-handed. It was his way of saying thank you for their unwavering loyalty. But then came the snub that everyone whispered about. His third wife, Pilar Palet, was completely erased from the will. Not a single dime was allocated to her. To be fair, they had technically separated years before his death, and a legal separation agreement had already divvied up their assets. They were living totally different lives by the time the end came. Because of that pre-existing contract, she had no legal leg to stand on. And Wayne made sure not to include even a symbolic gesture for her in his final testament. The most scandalous part of the will, however, was a specific clause targeting one man. Wayne explicitly ensured that Donald LaCava, the husband of his eldest daughter, would never see a penny of the Wayne fortune. The bad blood ran deep. Years prior, Donald had dragged the family into some shady financial deals that went south, and the Duke never forgave him for that incompetence or betrayal. The will was ironclad. It stated that Donald was forbidden from accessing or managing his wife's inheritance under any circumstances, even if she were to die before him. Wayne set up legal blockades to ensure the money would skip Donald entirely and flow directly to the grandchildren or other approved heirs. It was a final slap in the face from beyond the grave. John Wayne's last wishes were as bold and direct as his on-screen characters. He circled the wagons around the people he loved and shut the gate on those he didn't. He rewarded loyalty, protected his children, and settled old scores with a pen stroke. It was the ultimate power move, proving that even in death, the Duke was the one calling the shots. This wasn't just a legal document, it was a final manifesto from a self-made king who built an empire and intended to keep it safe from anyone he deemed unworthy. When the contents of John Wayne's will were finally revealed, it became clear that the Hollywood legend had carefully orchestrated his family's financial destiny, ensuring his millions went exactly where he wanted, while coldly shutting out anyone who had ever wronged him. This shrewd level of planning was designed to safeguard his kin for decades, proving that his true legacy was about far more than just box office hits. It was about survival and dominance. The Duke left behind something far more valuable than a library of westerns. He constructed a financial empire that would provide a safety net for his heirs long after the final credits rolled. His strategic blueprint guaranteed a prosperous future for his children and grandchildren, leveraging his name and likeness to build a dynasty that commands respect and generates revenue to this very day. John was the father of 7 children, and he made sure that every single one of them had a specific role to play in keeping the flame of his memory burning bright. Michael Wayne, his eldest son, didn't just inherit money. He stepped into the producer's chair, becoming a Hollywood power player dedicated to fiercely guarding the integrity of the family name. Mary, affectionately known as Tony Wayne, was granted a significant portion of the estate, ensuring she would never have to worry about her financial security. While she chose a life away from the flashing cameras, she remained the family's emotional anchor, unlike Patrick Wayne, who embraced the spotlight and carved out his own long, successful career, acting in his father's massive shadow. Melinda Wayne took on the crucial role of managing the intricate family affairs, working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep the chaotic world of a celebrity estate running like a well-oiled machine. Then there was Isa Wayne, who became the public face of the family business, constantly sharing intimate stories of her father to ensure that new generations understood the man behind the myth. John Ethan Wayne, one of the younger sons, stepped up to become the guardian of the brand, fighting to protect the John Wayne trademark in a rapidly changing modern world. After spending time in front of the camera himself, he shifted his focus entirely to business, ensuring his father's rugged image remained untarnished and profitable. Marissa Wayne, the youngest of the bunch, remained a steadfast supporter at all family gatherings, backing her siblings as the patriarch's shrewd financial decisions continued to pay off for everyone. He also set up a robust trust fund for his first wife, Josephine, guaranteeing her monthly payments for a comfortable lifestyle, and upon her passing, he directed that remaining wealth to flow directly to 4 of their children. This manoeuvre provided them with an unshakable layer of security, as the trust fund was designed to offer steady, reliable support while keeping the principal amount safe from poor investments or prying eyes. It was a financial structure built for longevity, ensuring that the Wayne fortune would not just survive but thrive, supporting future generations of the family tree. Even John's grandchildren have reaped the rewards of this master plan, with several of them now actively working within the family enterprise to keep the wheels turning. They aren't just trust fund kids, they are active decision makers helping to steer the estate, supporting ongoing projects and introducing the legend of the Duke to a whole new demographic of fans. To this day, the family retains full ownership of the estate, which continues to generate massive profits as merchandise bearing John Wayne's face flies off shelves around the globe. Fans from every corner of the earth still clamour for a piece of the legend, buying up products because John didn't just leave money, he instilled values that kept his family united and focused. They took his lessons to heart, treating his empire with the same grit and determination he showed on screen, proving that his true bequest was a work ethic rather than just a bank account. This dedication gave them a surname they could wear like a badge of honour, and his legacy remains vibrant today thanks to the blood relatives who fiercely protect everything he built. The children of John Wayne quickly learned that protecting their father's creation was a full-time job, requiring vigilance against anyone trying to exploit his image. They banded together to ensure his name remained a symbol of strength and integrity, laying the groundwork to transform a dead actor's estate into a living, breathing business juggernaut. That effort blossomed into a modern commercial empire known as John Wayne Enterprises, a company that proves the Duke is still a heavyweight contender in the business world long after his death. Their corporate mission is crystal clear: keep the man's memory alive and kicking while teaching his core values of grit and patriotism to a brand new era of Americans. The company operates with a defensive mindset, working around the clock to police the use of his name and image to prevent cheap knockoffs or disrespectful associations. They act as gatekeepers, ensuring that any product stamped with the Duke's name represents quality, honest values, and the rugged respect that John Wayne himself stood for. You won't find the Wayne brand chasing fleeting TikTok trends. The company focuses exclusively on timeless goods that reflect durability and classic style, just like the man himself. Beyond profits, they have made philanthropy a cornerstone of the operation, ensuring that giving back to the community is baked into the very DNA of the brand. John Wayne Enterprises has expanded into a diverse conglomerate, with a standout success being the Wayne Family Estate, a venture that produces and sells premium wines. The wine label has become a massive hit, and they have also teamed up with Fire and Flavour to launch a line of high-end grilling tools and culinary products. These ventures are a perfect match, seamlessly blending with the cowboy mystique and love for the great outdoors that fans instantly associate with the Duke. The merchandising arm is equally robust, offering a vast array of collectibles, including coffee table books, cowboy hats, apparel, and limited edition posters. Whether it represents a fresh design or a throwback to his classic cinema days, fans are eager to open their wallets to own a tangible piece of American history. The estate also maintains close ties with major publishing houses, regularly churning out books that chronicle the fascinating life and career of the Hollywood titan. These publications serve to tell his story in a way that is both accessible and impactful, but perhaps the most vital component of his lasting impact is the John Wayne Cancer Foundation. Established shortly after his passing, this foundation was born from a desire to join the fight against the terrible disease that ultimately claimed his life. Having battled cancer multiple times, John was passionate about aiding others in the trenches, and the foundation now funnels significant cash into research and patient support programs. It also plays a crucial role in education, teaching people the importance of early detection and proactive health management to save lives before it is too late. In the year 2026, John Wayne Enterprises is far more than just a corporate entity. It is a movement dedicated to preserving a legend and making a positive impact on the world. His descendants manage the operation with immense pride, strictly adhering to the code of conduct he lived by to ensure his reputation remains spotless. It is a continuation of the family's charitable spirit, proving that the Waynes have built an organisation that honours the man's memory just as much as it generates profit. They have ingeniously created multiple avenues to retell his story, securing steady revenue streams that keep the business healthy while winning over new fans every day. Decades may have passed since John Wayne rode into the sunset, but his brand is still a goldmine thanks to a family that worked tirelessly to ensure his legacy never fades to black. Even in the year 2026, the John Wayne Empire is a massive financial powerhouse, pulling in serious cash from every direction you can imagine. These diverse revenue channels do more than just pay the bills. They secure a lavish lifestyle for the family while ensuring the Duke's brand remains untouchable for generations to come, with his legendary film vault leading the charge. We are talking about timeless masterpieces here. Films like True Grit, The Searchers and Stagecoach are not gathering dust. They are still dominating screens and capturing hearts. You can find these cinematic treasures everywhere, from cable television marathons to digital downloads and streaming giants, proving that the Duke is still a top-tier entertainer. Every single time a fan hits play or purchases a digital copy, the cash register rings for the estate, and thanks to international distribution, his rugged charm is conquering foreign markets too. These lucrative global deals ensure that the Wayne dynasty rakes in profits from millions of international fans who simply cannot get enough of the American cowboy mystique. Then you have the merchandising machine, which is an absolute juggernaut, pumping out everything from branded apparel and cowboy hats to mugs plastered with his iconic face and gritty quotes. People are not just buying this stuff, they are obsessed with it, whether they are die-hard loyalists who grew up with him or collectors looking for the perfect piece of Hollywood history. This flood of products keeps the Duke's rugged image front and centre on store shelves and digital marketplaces, ensuring that fresh waves of fans discover the legend every single day. Smart brand partnerships are another massive slice of the financial pie, as the Wayne family carefully curates deals that align perfectly with the star's tough guy persona. They are incredibly selective, demanding that any product bearing the Duke's name must be rugged, authentic, and built to survive the wild frontier. Just look at the exclusive wine collection from Wayne Family Estates or the premium grilling gear developed with Fire and Flavour. These are high-end lifestyle products that scream quality. These items perfectly capture the bold, no-nonsense lifestyle that fans adore, and because the family refuses to sell out for a quick buck, the brand maintains its pristine reputation. It is a brilliant strategy that resonates with the old guard who saw his films in theatres, as well as the younger crowd who admire the sheer masculinity of his story. This universal appeal is the secret sauce that keeps the business thriving across every demographic, but the hustle does not stop at merchandise. The estate has also built a fortress of wealth through shrewd real estate moves, holding on to land and luxury properties that have skyrocketed in value over the decades. These assets are managed with ruthless efficiency as part of a long-game strategy alongside a diverse portfolio of stocks and private business funds that keep the money flowing. It is this level of financial savvy that builds true generational wealth, ensuring the John Wayne brand remains as steady and immovable as a mountain. The beauty of this setup is that if one sector takes a dip, the other revenue streams pick up the slack, keeping the entire operation bulletproof. When you combine the film, royalties, product sales, real estate holdings, and business ventures, you get a financial engine that tirelessly supports the family legacy. It is clear that John Wayne is still the hardest working man in show business, with his assets taking care of his descendants long after his final scene. However, the money is just the tip of the iceberg. His true power lies in a cultural impact that completely reshaped how the world sees American heroes. The name John Wayne became synonymous with unshakable strength, raw courage, and the ability to stand tall when the whole world is crumbling around you. Audiences worshipped him as the man who never broke a promise and never backed down from a fight, cementing his status as a bona fide American icon whose shadow still looms large. He dominated the screen as the ultimate tough guy in war epics and westerns, and for millions those roles were not just fiction, they were a blueprint for real American values. He was the walking, talking embodiment of freedom, grit and bravery, becoming a father figure that people from coast to coast looked up to with reverence. Even today, you will find countless people who believe John Wayne represents the very soul of the American spirit, having single-handedly defined the Western genre. That signature slow walk, the gravelly voice, and that piercing, honest stare are etched into the history books, transforming the Western from a simple movie style into a legendary art form. It is amazing to see that new generations are still tuning in, feeling an instant connection to the raw authenticity of the characters he brought to life. His image endures because he was not a fake. He stood for something real, which is why the nation went wild celebrating his 100th birthday back in 2007. The festivities were absolutely massive, with events designed to honour a legacy that is larger than life. Happy birthday to the Duke, indeed. Families flocked together for traditional chuckwagon dinners and open-air concerts, recreating the magic and atmosphere of the Old West that he loved so much. It was a sight to behold, with fans donning cowboy hats, belting out songs from his classic films, and swapping emotional stories about how the Duke influenced their lives. The excitement peaked at high-stakes auctions, where collectors spent fortunes on signed photos, screen-used props, and rare memorabilia that you just cannot find anywhere else. There were even trivia battles where superfans could flex their knowledge of his filmography to win prizes, all orchestrated with the blessing and help of his devoted family. Their goal was to ensure that John was remembered not just as a star, but as a man who brought joy and meaning to millions. But perhaps the most powerful part of his story is the John Wayne Cancer Foundation, a crusade started by his family to fulfill his dying wish after he left us. John was a warrior who fought cancer multiple times, and in his final days, he was determined to help others survive the same brutal battle he faced. Today, that foundation is a beacon of hope, raising serious money for cutting-edge cancer research and patient care through high-profile charity events and golf tournaments. One of the standout initiatives is the Louis and the Duke Classic series, which has become a major highlight for supporters of the cause. These gatherings are a perfect blend of nostalgia and philanthropy, bringing folks together to watch his movies while pooling resources to fight a deadly disease. Through this incredible foundation, his name continues to offer a lifeline to families in the trenches of cancer treatment, reminding them to never give up the fight. Decades may have passed, but John Wayne is still out there saving lives and making a difference, proving his impact is far greater than Hollywood fame or fortune. He taught the world what it truly means to be strong, loyal and brave, embedding himself permanently into the fabric of American history. Through his immortal films, his life-saving foundation and the undying love of his fans, the legacy of John Wayne will ride on forever. The massive estate left behind by John Wayne didn't just provide comfort, it fundamentally altered the trajectory of his family for generations to come. Watching his ascent from humble, dusty beginnings to leaving behind a financial empire is a truly gripping saga that continues to fascinate the world. If you are loving these deep dives into the secret lives and hidden scandals of Hollywood legends, please take a second to like this video and hit that subscribe button. We have got countless more shocking stories and biography breakdowns coming your way that you definitely do not want to miss. Make sure you stay glued to the screen and keep your notifications on so you never slip up and miss a single update.